On the day of my beloved mother's funeral, my sister-in-law callously remarked, "I overslept, so I'm skipping the funeral." It was a cruel twist after she had coerced my frail mother into spending nearly $200,000 on a new house. Suppressing my outrage, I managed to respond, "Fine, but you'll regret this decision, sis." "I regret nothing. Have a good one," came her dismissive reply before she hung up. After the funeral, when I confronted my brother with something, even his typically gentle demeanor turned to anger. "Lisa, I need your help. We're going to make her pay," he said, his voice laced with fury. My name is Lisa. At 28 years old, I'm single with a fulfilling job that keeps me busy every day, but I'm holding up well despite the challenges. Today, a weekend and a rare day off from work, I returned home to my mother's house after a long absence. "Hi, Mom. How have you been?" I greeted her warmly. "Welcome back, Lisa. I'm glad to see you," she replied with a gentle smile. We sat together, sipping tea and catching up. My mother has always been kind, gentle, and elegant. It's been a few years since my father passed away, leaving her to live alone. Both Dad and I have always worried about her health because of her frailty. On my days off, I make it a point to visit her and spend time together. "Mom, has anything troubling happened recently?" I asked, sensing there might be something on her mind. "Well, there's something," she began, her expression growing serious. Just as my mother was about to speak, the doorbell chimed. "Oh, that must be Stephanie," I remarked. "Stephanie? Was she expected today?" my mother questioned. "Not exactly, but she drops by like this from time to time. I'll go see," I replied, heading towards the door. Stephanie is my older brother's wife, and they recently tied the knot. She's my sister-in-law, a lively contrast to my quiet and easygoing brother. Despite finding her spontaneous visits a tad intrusive, I appreciate her genuine concern for our mother. "Hello, everyone. Lisa, it's been ages," Stephanie exclaimed cheerfully as I opened the door. "Hi, Stephanie." "Yes, it has been a while," I replied, welcoming her inside. "Lisa, you're still consumed by work, aren't you? You're in accounting, right?" "Personally, I could never handle it. I'm always swamped with housework. It would be nice if you settled down soon too," my sister-in-law remarked. "Yeah, maybe," I replied non-committally. My sister-in-law appeared timid around my mother, but occasionally she'd slip in these passive-aggressive comments directed at me. I wasn't sure if she meant any harm, but they always left me feeling uneasy. "It sounds like my sister-in-law is here, so I should head off now," I announced as I prepared to leave. "All right, Lisa, let's catch up more next time," my mother replied warmly as she saw me out. I couldn't shake the feeling that there might be tension between Mom and my sister-in-law. Mom never spoke ill of others, so I worry she might be holding something back. Despite my concerns, I bid farewell and headed home. A few months later, Mom informed me that my brother was constructing an elaborate new house. "Huh, my brother makes a decent income, but he's not exactly wealthy, right? And my sister-in-law is a full-time homemaker. How can they afford to build such a house?" I questioned. "Well, I actually helped him out a bit with some money from your father's inheritance," my mother admitted. "How much is a bit?" I pressed. "About $20,000, I suppose," she replied calmly. "$20K, Mom, are you serious?" I exclaimed, unable to hide my surprise. My late father had raised both my brother and me to be independent once we reached adulthood, so I couldn't understand why my mother would give away such a large sum of money. "Well, Stephanie, your sister-in-law came over almost every week, pleading for help. And besides, Andrew and Stephanie promised to take care of me since we'll all be living together." I couldn't refuse, my mother explained, her voice tinged with hesitation. "If you're okay with it, Mom, but are you sure this isn't too much?" I asked, concerned. "No, not at all. This will ease your worries and make life simpler for you, Lisa. I'm actually looking forward to this new chapter," Mom said with a smile. Later, they completed construction on their new home, and my brother, his wife, and Mom began living together. When I visited to bring the housewarming gift, I was astonished by the luxurious house. A modern-style kitchen and bathroom, expensive-looking interiors with pure wood, and a spacious backyard. It was clear my brother couldn't afford all this on his own. Proudly, my sister-in-law gave me a tour of the house. Afterward, I pulled my brother aside. "Congratulations on your new house, Andrew. Please take good care of Mom," I said quietly. "Thanks, Lisa." Don't worry, Stephanie will take care of Mom while I'm at work. I felt guilty about Mom offering to help, but we're determined to make her even happier now, he assured me. It appears my brother was unaware that his wife had been repeatedly visiting our mom to ask for money for their new house. He's generally good-natured and kind, but his obliviousness concerns me at times. Alright, just make sure you look after her, I reminded him. Of course, leave Mom to us and focus on your work, he replied. Let's not talk about work, I quickly corrected myself. Oops, sorry about that. After our conversation, I handed him an envelope containing some cash and a standing clock. This clock also monitors health, so please place it where Mom can see it in the living room, I explained. Thanks, this clock is pretty advanced, huh? It should be good for Mom, and it looks stylish too. Let's place it here, my brother agreed, setting the clock on a shelf in the living room. I should head home now. Take care, I said, preparing to leave. My sister-in-law was occupied with a phone call in another room as I departed the grand house with my mother and brother seeing me off. 6 months passed peacefully, during which my concerns about Mom lessened as she seemed to be settling in well with my brother and his wife. I focused on my work, assuming these days would continue indefinitely, until the unexpected news of Mom's passing reached me. When my brother returned home from work, he discovered that our mother had passed away alone in her room. The doctors later explained at the hospital that her pre-existing heart condition, aggravated by overexertion, likely caused her death. Mom, why so suddenly? I wish I had come home earlier. I'm sorry, I lamented, overwhelmed with grief. My brother and I held on to our mother's lifeless form, tears streaming down our faces. Stephanie, my sister-in-law, was noticeably absent. Brother, where's Stephanie? Wasn't she supposed to be here? And what do they mean by overwork? I asked, my voice trembling. Stephanie wasn't here. As for overwork, he began, struggling to find the words. I'm not sure either. Stephanie took care of all the household chores, so this doesn't make any sense, my brother admitted, sounding perplexed. Despite my unease, I interjected, first, we need to arrange our mother's wake and funeral. Andrew, you'll likely need to lead the arrangements as the chief mourner. You're right, Lisa, could you assist me? He asked. And so, my brother and I dove headfirst into organizing the memorial service. It was a whirlwind of preparations, selecting a venue, outlining the schedule, notifying guests, and more. Somehow, we managed to complete the wake, and the following day was the funeral. While my brother and I were occupied greeting visitors, my sister-in-law sat passively, not lifting a finger or shedding a tear. Despite my growing frustration with her behavior, the hectic pace of the day kept me from addressing it directly. Andrew, tomorrow is the funeral, and as the chief mourner, you're going to be quite busy. Why don't you and Stephanie head home for a while? I'll stay here, I suggested. Yeah, Lisa, that would be helpful. Thank you, my brother replied gratefully. They departed together, leaving me alone in the now empty room. I retrieved my work laptop and began to focus on tasks. That night, sleep eluded me. The following morning, on the day of the funeral scheduled for 10 a.m., I met Andrew at 6 a.m. to commence preparations. We were inundated with tasks, reviewing Andrew's eulogy, meeting with the funeral director, and ensuring everything was in order. Around 9:30 a.m., I received a call from Stephanie, as my brother had mentioned she would arrive later for the funeral. Hello, Lisa. I'm calling because Andrew wouldn't answer his phone, Stephanie said. Okay, Aunt, I replied, sensing tension in her voice. I overslept. I won't be able to make it to the funeral, she confessed. Struggling to maintain composure, I replied evenly, alright, but you might regret this, Stephanie. I doubt it. Anyway, I know you're busy. Hang in there, Stephanie said before hanging up abruptly. Was that Stephanie just now? My brother asked as he approached. Yeah, she overslept and won't be coming today, I informed him with disappointment in my voice. Ha! What is she talking about? It's our mother's funeral, Andrew exclaimed in disbelief. Let's focus on the funeral for now, Andrew. I have something important to show you afterward, I said firmly. We somehow made it through the funeral together, paying our final respects to our mother. Stephanie was conspicuously absent, leaving us both puzzled and frustrated. Lisa, what did you want to show me? Andrew asked as we found a moment alone. Come, take a look at this, I replied, opening my laptop. Confused, Andrew leaned in to see the screen, which displayed the living room of his house. I explained, "This is the clock I gave you as a gift. It has a camera installed, designed for monitoring elderly relatives or pets. I gave it because I was worried about Mom, but since she seemed fine, I never checked it until yesterday. I reviewed the footage from the past week. Here it is," I said quietly, opening several videos on my laptop. My brother watched them intently, his expression tense. The footage revealed our mother being harshly treated by my sister-in-law. "I'm taking care of you, so at least do your chores properly." Stephanie's voice came through the video as she assigned all household tasks to our mother, from cooking and laundry to cleaning. The scenes showed her frail mother being pushed to exhaustion. While she toiled, Stephanie would often dress up and leave the house. In moments captured on video, our mother could be seen clutching her chest in discomfort, reaching for her phone hesitantly but ultimately deciding against making a call. Mom couldn't bring herself to tell us about how Stephanie treated her. She always wanted us to be happy, you know, Mom. I had no clue. Please forgive me. Both my brother and I were in tears, overwhelmed by the memories of our mother. "Lisa, can we watch the footage from the day Mom passed away?" my brother asked, his voice heavy with emotion. "I haven't viewed it myself, but Mom passed away in her room, so I'm not sure if there's any footage of her," I explained, setting the recording to the date of our mother's passing. As we watched, after completing her morning routine, our mother was seen clutching her chest as she made her way to her room. They said she passed away around 2 p.m. The living room remained empty for a while, but as we fast-forwarded the recording, Andrew spoke up. "Hey, look at this. Stop and turn up the volume," Andrew exclaimed urgently. Around noon, my sister-in-law appeared on the camera feed. As we increased the volume, her voice became clear. "Hey, mother-in-law, mother-in-law." Stephanie called out towards my mother's room. When there was no response, she appeared to assume that our mother wasn't home. She then sat down on the sofa and made a phone call. "Hello? Thanks for being there earlier. It looks like the old lady has left without finishing her chores. I wonder what she's up to," Stephanie remarked casually over the phone. It appeared she was speaking to someone she had been with since morning. As I listened to the call's harsh content, I couldn't help but grimace. My sister-in-law continued her conversation. "What if she's dead? That would be something. Then again, I could skip the funeral and maybe go on a trip with Daniel. Opportunities like these don't come around often," she remarked, shocking both my brother and me. The person on the other end of the line was evidently my sister-in-law's lover. Wouldn't it be great if that really happened? I could fabricate a story about domestic abuse from my husband, secure a hefty divorce settlement, and buy this house. Then Daniel and I could live here together. So where would you like to go on our trip? "That's enough," Andrew interrupted sharply. I paused the video, my heart pounding. My usually gentle brother's face hardened, his voice thick with anger. "Lisa, I need your help. We're going to confront her," he declared firmly. I nodded in agreement and immediately made a phone call. The next day, Andrew phoned me while I was at home. "Lisa, she's back. Can you come over?" he asked urgently. "I'm on my way," I replied, hurrying to my brother's house without delay. "Well, hello, Lisa. What brings you here on such short notice? You really should have given me a heads up." Stephanie greeted me with a hint of irritation as she came out to meet me. "Andrew asked me to come. Follow me," I said, leading the way into the house filled with the scent of incense. My brother, sister-in-law, and I gathered around the dining table. "What's all this about? You both look so serious." "I do feel bad about missing the funeral," Stephanie remarked casually. "Stephanie, since you moved in, you've been treating Mom like a servant, haven't you? You've even made her pay $20,000 for the new house, despite her being ill." I confronted her directly. "What? That's ridiculous. I did all the housework. Are you trying to start something?" Stephanie retorted defensively. "Everything has been recorded, Stephanie. I'm not actually an accountant. I'm a private investigator," I revealed, surprising both my sister-in-law and my brother. It was a secret I had kept from everyone except Andrew. I pointed to the surveillance camera hidden in the living room clock and showed her the footage on my phone. The video clearly showed our mother doing household chores under Stephanie's orders. "What? This is a violation of my privacy. How could you do this? Delete it immediately," Stephanie protested angrily. "I installed it as the homeowner. I have every right to do so. It's not a violation of privacy," Andrew responded calmly but firmly. "What's going on here? And why are you suddenly talking about being a private investigator? Stephanie's voice trembled, a realization dawning on her. Andrew silently dialed his phone. Soon, the audio of Stephanie's earlier phone call began to play. I might just skip the funeral and go on a trip with Daniel, and maybe fabricate some story about domestic abuse for my husband to get a big divorce settlement, the recording revealed. Stephanie's face turned pale as the truth sank in. No, this isn't what it looks like. Please let me explain, she pleaded desperately. What's the difference? Explain yourself, Andrew demanded, his tone cutting through the tension in the room. My sister-in-law stammered, trying to concoct excuses. He's just a friend. We were joking. There's no cheating going on here, right? Where's the evidence? But there is, I stated calmly, laying out several photos on the table. Each one depicted Stephanie and another man, leaving a resort together, being intimate in their car, and entering a hotel upon their return, undeniable proof of infidelity. What? How did you get these? Stephanie gasped, her face draining of color. You discussed it over the phone, remember? You planned your trip and how you'd spend the night together. I had someone from our company take these photos, I explained firmly. Stephanie recoiled in shock. How could you do this, especially during our mother's funeral? As I calmly laid out the situation, Stephanie's composure began to crack. Oh, enough. What's wrong with all of you? She exclaimed, her voice rising in frustration. There's no way we can continue this marriage, Stephanie, Andrew stated firmly. We're getting a divorce and I'll be seeking alimony. You'll need to move out of this house. Excuse me. Stephanie's disbelief was palpable, causing Andrew and me to exchange a knowing glance. What do you mean? Stephanie demanded, her tone tinged with defiance. I mean, in a divorce, the guilty party often pays compensation, Andrew clarified. What? Stephanie gasped, her earlier confidence faltering as the reality of the situation sunk in. Clearly, you're even more foolish than I realized. It's pathetic. As Lisa said, I'll be seeking alimony from you and your lover, Andrew declared firmly. What? Stephanie's voice trembled with disbelief. And I'm telling you to leave. Don't come back, Andrew continued, his tone resolute. No, this can't be happening, Stephanie protested weakly. I handed Stephanie her suitcase, which she took silently, still in shock. I escorted her to the door and closed it behind her. Turning back to Andrew, I gently placed a reassuring hand on his shoulder. 6 months later, my brother's divorce from my former sister-in-law was finalized. She contested it in mediation, but the evidence my brother presented left little room for argument. It also came to light that she had been recklessly spending from their joint bank account. According to my brother, the divorce settlement ended with minimal division of assets. True to his word, Andrew pursued alimony from both his ex-wife and her lover. The lover, who had planned to live off the substantial alimony from Andrew, was outraged by the unexpected claim and promptly ended the relationship with Stephanie. With no place to go and abandoned by her lover, my ex-sister-in-law now resides alone in an old apartment, making ends meet with part-time work. My brother went through a tough time. He eventually sold the house, feeling disillusioned with marriage, and now lives alone. Seeing him struggle with loneliness, I've been considering introducing him to a kind woman I met through work recently. She's also divorced, so I think they might connect well. With that in mind, I head out today, focus on my work once more. My name is Maria Dolphin, and I'm about to turn 27. I've been married for 5 years and have a 4-year-old son named Martin. At first, I worked full-time, but now I work part-time at the same company. My husband is 30 years old, 3 years older than me. Kevin Carlton, who I married, seemed sweet when we were dating, but things changed after marriage. He became more controlling. Kevin has a 20-year-old sister named Jane Dalton, and he spoils her a lot, maybe because of their big age gap. Before we got married, I didn't really mind how close Jane and Kevin were. But after tying the knot, I started noticing some changes. Jane frequently drops by our place, and I end up scrambling to cater to her every whim because Kevin always caves into her demands. She shows up unannounced, morning or night, without bringing any gifts or even a thank you. She acts like I'm invisible, only talking to Kevin, saying, "Hey brother, I'm here again." Kevin, oblivious to the fact that I didn't prepare dinner for Jane, asks if she wants to eat. When I try to discreetly mention it to Kevin, he brushes it off. leaving me to serve my own dinner to Jane in the end. Then, loud enough for Jane to hear, he blames me, saying things like, "You should have made more food." Jane looks like she's going to cry and apologizes to me. Kevin comforts her and scolds me, saying things like, "You're not considerate," or "Don't be mean to my sister." Even though Jane apologizes, it's clear she feels reassured by how Kevin takes her side. It's like she enjoys it. I end up making my own meal from leftovers while they eat together. Just as I'm about to join them, Jane tells Kevin she wants to talk alone. Kevin moves me and Martin to another room. This isn't the first time. After we finish eating and clean up, I find them chatting on the sofa. They never bothered to clean up after themselves. It feels like they see me as a maid, not a wife or sister-in-law. They don't even talk to Martin. It's like I'm just a maid bringing my kid to work. I was tidying up the kitchen and getting ready to bathe Martin when Kevin suddenly called me, even though it was almost 8 p.m. He said, "Jane wants cake. Go buy it now. Get it from the shop by the station," telling me exactly where to go. But going out to buy cake would make Martin go to bed late. When I hesitated, Jane insisted, "I want it now," and Kevin rushed me, saying, "It's fine if he stays up a bit longer tonight." Then Kevin started yelling at me, blaming me for having an attitude with Jane around. I knew I'd have to go to the cake shop eventually, so I reluctantly agreed. There's a cake shop near the station that closes at 9 p.m. So if I hurry, I can make it. As I was getting ready to go, I overheard them talking, speaking loudly enough for me to hear. They were saying things like, "She's so thoughtless," and "Why did you marry her?" Since I couldn't leave Martin alone, I decided to take him with me. While I was getting Martin ready, I heard Kevin's loud voice from the living room. "If you defy me again, we'll get a divorce." Martin could hear it too. He might not understand the words, but I think he knows his parents are fighting. Trying to control my emotions, I asked Martin, "What kind of cake would you like?" He perked up and said, "Mom, I want a cake with lots of fruits." So on our way to the cake shop, we chatted about cakes, momentarily forgetting about Kevin's words. We made it to the cake shop just before it closed. Luckily, they had the cake Jane wanted. We bought 2 cakes and the fruit-loaded cake Martin desired. When we got back home, I served the cakes to Jane and Kevin. I prepared Martin's cake and brought it to the dining room. As soon as I set it down in front of Martin, Jane pointed at it and said, "Actually, I want that cake." Before I could respond, Kevin moved Martin's cake in front of Jane. Ignoring Martin's protests, Jane started eating his cake. Kevin justified it by saying, "I bought that cake with my money, so I get to choose." Unable to contain my emotions any longer, I expressed my frustration to Kevin and Jane. Kevin then threatened, "We could get a divorce, you know." Martin stopped crying but held my hand tightly, looking worried. Then, after a moment, Martin said, "Mom, I also love cake with strawberries. It's really yummy." He mentioned it while eating the cake that Jane initially wanted. I feel like I'm putting Martin through too much. 3 adults, myself included, shouldn't be subjecting a 4-year-old child to this. When I saw Jane reaching for Martin's cake, I swiftly moved his plate away. Martin happily followed me to another room, saying, "Yummy, let's go over here." Probably Kevin noticed Jane's attempt too. He apologized to her, saying, "Sorry for being so tight-fisted." I wanted to respond, but I held back, not wanting to expose Martin to the word divorce. Seeing Martin innocently enjoying his cake is heartwarming. After he finished, ignoring Kevin and Jane, we decided to have a late bath and sleep in Martin's bed. The next morning, I woke up to find Jane had already left. I was about to wake up Kevin and Martin and make breakfast when I heard Martin crying. I rushed to him to find his piggy bank, a gift from my father, broken, and all his saved money gone. It was Martin's nightly ritual to bid goodnight to his piggy bank before going to sleep. Last night was no exception. He said goodnight to it and cuddled up with me. At that time, only Kevin and Jane were in the living room. I asked Kevin about the piggy bank. He responded casually, saying that Jane needed some money, so she took it from Martin's piggy bank. Martin was still crying as I held him close. His pain was so palpable that it brought tears to my eyes. It was agonizing to see Kevin prioritize and cater to his sister Jane over our son Martin. Anger and sadness flooded over me simultaneously. "Why are you making a morning so miserable?" Kevin retorted. "Don't you think you did something wrong? Martin is crying so much." For the first time since we got married, I let my anger out towards him. I had always avoided arguing in front of Martin. but I couldn't stay silent seeing him so hurt. Kevin looked at me intensely, then went to the bedroom without saying a word, returning with something in his hand. To my shock, Kevin handed me divorce papers, something I didn't even know he had stashed away. "If you're not happy with me, then let's get a divorce," he declared, thrusting the papers at me before storming out of the house with a loud slam of the door. Martin, who had never shed tears over the issues with Kevin and Jane, seemed to have reached his breaking point. He had been crying since last night, and it broke my heart to see him in such pain. "Hey Martin, how about we skip daycare today?" I suggested, hoping to bring him some comfort. He eagerly agreed with a loud yes, flashing me a faint smile. As Martin brought a picture book from the shelf and settled onto my lap, he looked up at me with joy and asked, "Today, Mama is the teacher at daycare, right?" His innocence was like a ray of sunshine. I couldn't help but marvel at his resilience. Today, I decided that we would spend the day playing and cherishing each moment together to fill his heart with happiness. I might be causing some inconvenience at work, but when I explained the situation, they kindly granted me a day off, advising me to spend quality time with Martin. In the morning, we headed to the park, played games like hide and seek, and had a blast on the swings and slides. Upon returning home for lunch, Martin seemed tired and soon dozed off on my lap, just like he used to when he was a baby. Normally, I would use this time to catch up on chores. But today felt different, so I decided to cherish the moment and enjoy watching him sleep peacefully. As I started to drift off myself, I was startled by a noise from the front door. It was too early for Kevin to be back, so I felt uneasy. Quickly, I scooped up Martin, and grabbing only my bag with essentials, I hurriedly hid with him in the bedroom closet. I froze as I sensed someone entering the house, holding my breath as I heard a familiar voice. The person seemed to be searching for something, muttering, "I can't find it." Where did the wife hide it? Fear gripped me as I listened to the sound of rummaging, but as I focused on the voice, I recognized it. It was Jane. Questions flooded my mind. Why did she have a key? What was she searching for? I cautiously cracked open the closet door to see what she was up to. She was rifling through drawers and cabinets, then let out a frustrated sigh before making a phone call. "I searched where you said, but it's not there." "Yeah, I checked there too. If it's not there, it's a waste of time." "Okay, got it. Heading home now," she said, mentioning Kevin's name. Kevin? I wondered what they were searching for. I heard the front door lock, and when it was safe, I put Martin to bed and pondered the strange events. I was certain Kevin was involved in whatever they were looking for. If they were searching for something unknown, could it be one of my possessions? Despite their earlier conversation, I couldn't decipher why Jane had suddenly appeared at our house. Kevin felt like a stranger to me, and I was overcome with a mix of disgust and fear towards him. Hastily, I packed the essentials for Martin and myself. By the time Martin woke from his nap, I was ready to leave. "Martin, let's go to Grandpa's house," I said, and we made our way to the station, catching a train to my parents' home. Thankfully, it was just 2 stops away, so we arrived swiftly. Since I hadn't informed them beforehand, my parents were surprised, but they sensed something was wrong and welcomed us without prying. Their dog, a favorite of Martin's, greeted him eagerly, and they began playing together. Watching them, I felt a sense of relief and proceeded to recount everything that had happened with Kevin and Jane. "Perhaps Jane was searching for your bank cards," my mother suggested. It made sense. Before getting married, I had founded a successful online shop for handmade goods with friends. As the CEO of the handmade industry, I gained recognition, but when the shop flourished, I decided to focus on raising my child. I've entrusted my company to trusted friends while I focus on raising my child. I work part-time and handle most tasks from home. Though I'm still the CEO, Kevin is unaware of this. He knows about my previous role and likely suspects I have savings. I've informed him that I receive assistance from the company but left out the CEO details, letting him assume I stepped down. I haven't disclosed the full extent of my CEO position or savings to Kevin for a reason. Shortly after our marriage, I discovered his poor money management skills. He spends everything he earns. He allocates only $200 monthly for food expenses and suggested I quit my job to be a full-time housewife. An idea I never agreed to, given the financial strain of such a small allowance. After some persuasion, he reluctantly agreed to let me work part-time at my current company. to ensure I wouldn't consider divorce. He even had me sign a postmarital property waiver with a lawyer. Since Martin's birth, I've been allotted only $200 for food expenses. Consequently, I've been using my savings to cover Martin's nursery fees and clothing expenses. I've refrained from asking Kevin for money beyond the food budget, leading him to assume I have substantial savings. Jane appears to be in dire need of money, and with Kevin's belief in my savings, they may be searching for my cash cards. It all makes sense now. I maintain a separate savings account dedicated to slowly accumulating funds for Martin's future. A portion of my salary is automatically deposited into this account each month. Given their financial circumstances, it's highly likely they are seeking my cash cards. No matter how hard Jane or Kevin search, they won't find my valuables because I always keep them close, including my cash cards. However, there's still an unresolved issue. Jane might be entering our house even when we're not there, possibly with Kevin's knowledge. Following my father's advice, I decided to store my valuables in my parents' safe. Why are they so desperate for money? As I pondered this question, Martin tearfully approached my father, explaining that his piggy bank had been broken, and he couldn't keep his promise to save up. My father's face flushed with anger upon hearing Martin's story. "I'll call Kevin and talk to him," my mother suggested. While chiding my father, "Let's find out their motives." She reasoned that since Kevin had mentioned divorce, he might try to blame us and make the divorce more favorable for himself. Therefore, it's essential to calmly uncover their motives now to prevent them from escaping with excuses later on. I decided to secretly record their conversation to uncover their motives. My parents suggested consulting a lawyer who was a longtime family friend. Once back home, I started cooking dinner as usual when Kevin returned. I discreetly began recording on my phone, keeping the screen face down to avoid detection. To my surprise, Kevin immediately asked me where I kept my cash cards. When I questioned his sudden interest, he provided vague answers, attempting to deceive me. Remaining silent, I watched as Kevin's demeanor shifted to one of numbness and sadness. "Give me all your part-time earnings for my sister," he demanded, but I refused, explaining that the money was for Martin's savings. This enraged Kevin, who then angrily pushed divorce papers toward me from his bag. "You're relying on my money, so don't defy me," he retorted, dismissing the importance of saving for Martin. His words implied a greater value placed on Jane over Martin, leaving me stunned and disheartened. Upon hearing Kevin's words, I halted my meal preparations, calmly placed the divorce papers into the bag I had prepared earlier, and grasped Martin's hand, leading him to the door. Kevin's voice boomed behind us, declaring, "I'm serious about the divorce. Don't ever return." In response, I asserted, "I won't return to a home where anyone can come and go as they please," before departing. Was it too harsh to label my sister-in-law as a stranger? Following my departure, I was bombarded with messages and calls from Kevin, all of which I chose to ignore. I powered off my phone and sought refuge at my parents' house. There, I played the recording of Kevin's conversation and showed them the completed divorce papers. My parents simply advised, "Do as you see fit." I didn't harbor any love or affection for Kevin, but I still cared deeply for Martin. Some advised me to divorce Kevin to spare Martin's feelings, but I feared that divorcing could also hurt Martin. Amidst this inner turmoil, Martin voiced his hunger, prompting my mother to whip up his favorite dish, hamburgers. Tears welled up in my eyes as my mother, with a gentle smile, said to Martin, "I made these hamburgers so you and Mom can visit us anytime." After taking a bite, Martin beamed and exclaimed, "Grandma's hamburgers are the best. I want them every day," his joyful words tugging on heartstrings. I replied, "It's because these hamburgers are made with all the love I have for you," as he sweetly fed me a bite. Overwhelmed by his kindness, tears streamed down my cheeks uncontrollably. I tried to suppress them, but they kept flowing. My father reassured Martin, who was alarmed by my tears, saying, "Mommy is crying because she's so happy you gave her this hamburger. These are tears of joy, not sadness," he explained tenderly. Martin, in his innocence, remarked, "This hamburger is so yummy. If Jane were here, she'd love it too." Hearing this, I couldn't hold back my tears, and I embraced him tightly, while my father's eyes filled with emotion. Turning to Martin, I said, "Being with family is a blessing, isn't it?" He looked puzzled and asked, "Didn't Dad say only Jane is family? Is my family just Mom, Grandpa, and Grandma?" My father responded gently, "Yes, that's right. then asked Martin, "Would you like to stay here with us as family?" Martin chuckled and replied, "Of course. We're family," bringing smiles to everyone's faces. When was the last time we had such a natural meal? When did we last enjoy a meal filled with endless laughter and conversation? Despite contemplating divorce, the happiness of this meal persuaded me to finally part ways with Kevin. I planned to break the news to Martin, though the thought weighed heavily on my heart. Surprisingly, Martin seemed to understand and embrace the idea of divorce, expressing, "We'll still be a family." He happily cuddled our pet dog, affectionately referring to him as his little brother, despite the dog being older. With resolve, I began preparations for the divorce. Firstly, I promptly contacted a lawyer who was a friend of my father, arranging to meet the following day. That night, Martin slept with my father and the dog, their faint laughter bringing me comfort as I lay in bed with my mother, reminiscing about my childhood. The next morning, upon checking my smartphone, I found over 200 missed calls and messages from Kevin, reflecting his emotional turmoil. Just the sight of it drained me, prompting me to switch off my phone once more. Today, I met with the lawyer, discussing the details and confirming my decision to divorce. We finalized the paperwork, and the lawyer will meet with Kevin tomorrow to proceed. After some time, the lawyer visited my parents' house to discuss the situation. It turned out that Jane had accrued a substantial debt from gambling and excessive shopping, with Kevin serving as her guarantor. When Jane couldn't make the repayments, they devised a plan to tap into my savings. Now, Kevin wants me and Martin back and is retracting his desire for a divorce, the lawyer explained. However, the divorce papers I had submitted earlier had already been processed. When asked if this meant the divorce was finalized, the lawyer confirmed it, stating, "Yes, it's been accepted." Kevin appeared to break down, expressing his fear of losing me to another man. Despite his emotional plea, knowing that everything was settled brought me a sense of peace. I anticipated arguments over child support, but Kevin even pledged to pay $340 to support Martin every month. Later, Kevin called me. Feeling relieved after the divorce proceedings, I decided to speak with him briefly. His tone was no longer aggressive. Instead, he spoke calmly. He confessed that he believed keeping me financially dependent would prevent me from seeking a divorce. He also acknowledged his tendency to spoil his younger sister, Jane, as a misguided form of sibling love. He admitted feeling jealous of Martin, fearing he had lost me to our son. "Once I've resolved Jane's debts, I'll come back for you. Please don't remarry until then," he pleaded. However, I firmly reiterated that I no longer loved him and wouldn't reconsider our relationship. Before hanging up, I could hear him sobbing softly as he whispered, "Please be happy. Did I manage to stay strong until the end?" Discussing future plans with my parents, I decided to remain at their house until Martin grows up, and he transferred to a different nursery. Returning to my role as company president, I explained the situation to my colleagues. Later, I learned that Kevin and Jane had disclosed the divorce and their debt to their parents, resulting in their disannulment. More than the financial issues, their parents were incensed about never seeing their grandson again. Now, Kevin and Jane, once close, reside in a modest apartment, constantly blaming each other. Their actions have led to their own downfall. Today, I find happiness in being with my family.